Welcome, men. Welcome to the Connected Man. This is an 8 week journey to help you show up better in your marriage or your relationship. Now, I want to start by acknowledging that even just being here really, really matters because most men never do this. Most men keep their heads down, hoping things will just fix themselves. They might read a book, they might listen to a podcast, maybe make small changes, but rarely stop long enough to ask the real question: what's actually happening between us, and where can I take responsibility for that? How can I look at myself to show up better and potentially make this relationship thrive? Now, you've chosen to pause and face that question in a really intentional way. And that choice right there is the beginning of relational leadership. Now, this course, The Connected Man, is about reclaiming your ability to lead in love, in family, and in yourself, not through control or charm or manipulation or trying to please everyone. People pleasing is a huge part of this course, but through courage and awareness and real integrity in your relationship. And this work matters. We live in a time where men are quietly struggling in their relationships. Disconnections become normal. Polite distance, short tempers, cold beds, and conversations that never really go anywhere. It's just become totally normalized. Disconnection is just so normal in our current climate within the world of relationships and relational dynamics. But underneath that distance, there's usually some pain. There's usually some unresolved resentment. There's usually some trauma, some misguided beliefs that have been formed. And that pain of not being understood, being misunderstood, is so, so damaging for us. The pain of feeling like you're always getting it wrong, that you can't be right, you're just not good enough, right? The pain of trying to fix things, but not actually knowing how. These are all real things that we struggle with as men. I've seen so many men go through this, and I know that pain personally myself. I've been the man who tried to talk his way through arguments, who tried to manipulate his way out of situations, who tried to people please his way into love and affection and connection, and sometimes tried to use logic to win the argument over and get things in my favor. Sometimes leaned into pity to win my side of the argument. And I've been the man who shut down to avoid conflict or worked harder, hoping that would bring peace. And I've seen firsthand what happens when good men don't have the tools to lead themselves emotionally, and they lose connection with the people they love the most. And that's why this course exists. That's why I really want to focus just on the relationship and help you take ownership over your side. So you're 50% of the relationships. You're going to take 100% responsibility over your 50%. That's what we're going to do over the next 8 weeks. Now, what is this journey about? This is an 8 week journey that's going to help you rebuild connection from the inside out. Each week builds on the last. It's going to be really transformative, and you'll learn how to understand yourself and your own patterns. You learn to communicate in a way that actually lands with your partner. You'll learn to lead at home, not by control, but by consistency. And you'll learn to rebuild safety, trust, and real intimacy that is deeply connecting. And ultimately, you'll become the man who brings calm and confidence and connection wherever he goes in the home, with your partner, with your wife, with your kids, with your community. That's the kind of man that we're looking to create through this course. Now, this isn't theory, this is practice. Every week, you're going to get one clear framework, one tool to apply, and one reflection to complete. Now, if you actually use them, you'll feel the difference. You'll start to see it over time. Not months from now, but in the next few weeks, you'll start to see real changes happening in your relationship. And it might feel difficult, it might feel uneasy, it might feel unfamiliar, but the invitation is to really lean in. So let's get into module 1, the collapse of connection. Now, this first module is the foundation, because before we can rebuild love, we need to understand why it breaks down in the first place. Why we argue the way we do, why we shut down, why it feels like we're doing everything we can, but it's still not enough. Why this disconnection just keeps happening more and more and more. That's what this session is about, and we'll explore the hidden patterns that cause relationships to collapse, the fears that drive disconnection, the family dynamics and childhood lessons that still shape how we're showing up today, and the first steps to starting to turn things around, how we can start to look at ourselves and look at the relationship and start really turning things around. We'll look at the research, the psychology, and the practical skills that we need, but we'll also look inwards, because every pattern out here begins in here. So our inner world is a reflection of and our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. Now, you'll see that connection doesn't disappear because love fades. It disappears when fear replaces honesty. So let that sink in. You'll see that connection doesn't disappear because the love fades. It disappears when fear replaces honesty. And today we're going to begin by replacing that fear with awareness and ownership and real courage. And we're going to face it, we're going to shine the light on it, and we're going to own it, and we're going to move through it together. So here's how we're going to move through this session today. We'll define what connection really is and what it isn't. We'll explore why its loss hurts us so much, and we'll uncover the specific patterns that cause breakdown, from Gottman's research to the nice guy habits, to family history, to emotional defenses that we all carry. Even me, I still carry these today, and I'm working through them consistently. And finally, we'll learn a practical method that helps you stay calm, clear, and connected when tension rises. Now, you'll leave tonight not just understanding why things go wrong, but with a few tools that you can use immediately to start changing how you show up. Now, your mindset for this work isn't about fixing your partner. It's about leading yourself so that you can provide a safe space for her to show up in this relationship too. We're not going out there to try and fix her or change her. We're fixing ourselves first. It's about being the kind of man who can sit in the discomfort without running away, who can own his truth without needing to dominate the discussion, and who can rebuild trust through presence and consistency. Now, there'll be moments that this feels uncomfortable, and that's okay, and that's good. It means that you're growing. So keep your heart open, keep your ego soft, and your mind really curious. Take as many notes as you possibly can. Reflect honestly, and remember, awareness without action is just information. And action is what changes everything. So let's begin. Before we talk about repair, leadership, or love, we have to start where every relationship begins and ends, with connection. What is it, why it matters, and how it collapses. Because if you can understand that, you can start to rebuild anything. So here we go. What does connection really mean? Well, connection isn't about just agreeing on everything or being in constant harmony. It's the invisible current that runs between two people and says that, you're safe with me, and you can show up fully, and so can I. Like, we can both be our full selves in this relationship. Now, every expert explains it all a little bit differently. So Gottman, the Gottman Institute, has been running for 40 years, interviewing and studying thousands of relationships, calls it turning towards each other. So choosing curiosity instead of defense. Terry Real, a really famous relational therapist, calls it relational integrity. So truth and empathy, like, held at the same time. So truth and empathy held at the same time. Stan Tatkin says it's a secure functioning system. People, two people protecting the us. So two people working as hard as they possibly can against the things that fight to break us apart. So they're fighting for our relationship. So we're two people individually fighting for the unity that we've created. And in my company, in Mantra, and the work I do, we define it as safety and honesty in motion. So two nervous systems staying open even in discomfort. And when that's present, when all those things are present, relationships start to breathe. When it's gone, fear replaces honesty, and comfort replaces courage. We should start leaning into comfort mechanisms instead of being brave and leaning into that fear. Now, connection isn't comfort, it's safety through honesty. Really let that land. Safety through honesty, being able to be safe, to be totally honest, even if it's uncomfortable, about yourself or about your partner. Now, notice when your partner stops telling the truth, or, starts trying to keep the peace. That's the first crack in the bridge between you two. Notice when your partner stops telling the truth, or you stop telling the absolute truth just to keep the peace. Now, notice when that's maybe happened this week. Notice maybe when it's happened in the last month or the last year. How often does that happen, where you sacrifice the truth just to keep the peace? Maybe you don't want to call them out because of a number of different things that we can get into. Maybe you notice that she's not really calling you out, and we're leaning into something called contagious apathy, where we let each other away with stuff, and it eventually just lowers the bar of what we're willing to tolerate, and it widens this gap between what our expectations are and what we're willing to tolerate. And this gap here, this expectation gap, or the tolerance gap, is something that we really need to look at. We want to actually have our expectations at a realistic level and reduce what we're willing to tolerate. So we're not actually allowing this gap to be as big as it maybe has been in the past. Maybe you tolerate behaviors that you deem really low. So you're way down here with your tolerance, but your expectations are up here. That's where resentment, the more space you have in between your expectation and your tolerance, you have more space for resentment. And it's the truth that kind of stops you addressing those things. So, tonight, maybe, or this week, start asking yourself, am I being honest, or am I managing perception? Am I trying to manipulate perception? Am I trying to keep the peace with my partner? And replace one, little small white lie that you're maybe telling in the relationship with one small truth. Just looking if you can pick up on one and change it. And one of the most important reasons for this one small shift being so important is that the bridge between us, so the connection between us, imagine a bridge with trade, going across from two different islands, say, and you want that emotional trade. Now, if that starts to break down, then you start to feel distance or danger. And your body doesn't actually know the difference between emotional distance and danger. Just the separation and isolation feels dangerous and bad. So if you start to lose trade, like emotional trade, and truth is one of the strongest parts of that trade, the strongest commodities that we can have in that emotional trade, then we start to feel distant, and our bodies, our nervous systems can interpret that as danger. So it's about building a system of trade where we can trade the truth in a safe way. We can have steady flow of emotional truths that are going back and forth across this bridge that connects these two islands. So think about it like that. Think about you're trying to create a healthy trade of emotional truth between two islands. Now, when this collapse starts to happen, maybe you're in a position where you're feeling that right now, you're in the depths of it, the collapse is really hurting. The reason this is hurting is because we are wired for attachment. From birth, our nervous system looks for safety in another person. So when connection breaks, your body goes into this real survival mode, and maybe your heart rate spikes, your breath shortens, your muscles tighten, your nervous system's responding to this isolation, this loneliness. And that's why heartbreak feels physical, because it is like your body is actually responding. Your heart is like responding to emotional disconnection. And we can attribute that to, I'm feeling like I'm emotionally wounded, or I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling heartbroken at the situation that's going on right now. It's because it's true. You're actually feeling that in your heart. Your heart has an innate intelligence. It's got 40,000 neurites, which are the same as the neurons in your brain. And your heart actually sends 10 times more information up to your brain than your brain does to your heart. So when you're feeling this feeling, your brain is trying to communicate that this is bad. I'm feeling some negative energy here, and I need to open up. I need to speak my truth. But sometimes it's so scary that we just don't do it because we fear of the response that we're going to get, or the outcome of telling the truth. Now, when that pain hits, we protect ourselves. So we go into fight, we argue, or we justify. We go into flight, we avoid or shut down. We go into freeze, we just go numb, just completely numb ourselves out, go into comfort, convenience, or consumption, and we just run away from all of our problems, all of our truths, all of our difficult situations. Or we go into fawn. We appease, or we over explain, or we people please, or we overcommit to things, and we just become a yes man in a relationship. So when that pain hits, we protect ourselves by fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, these are fear responses, not faults, not flaws. They are fear responses. Your body doing its job. You feel a fear, and your body's just responding to it. They protect us, but also block us from emotional closeness. So when you feel unsafe, your body tends to lead, right? You feel the nervous system response. Your body is actually responding before your brain. And it's because your nervous system and your reptilian brain, so like the kind of old parts of your brain, respond 0.2 of a second faster than your prefrontal cortex. So your body is picking up on all of this emotional information, the tension that you start to feel in the body, and it's responding before you've had a chance to really, really think about it. And what it can do is it can shorten the bottleneck in the brainstem and the amygdala, and your body can respond in this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response before you've had a chance to actually think about what's going on and assess the situation properly. So the next time that this tension rises, let's notice which of those four things show up first. Are you going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? What is your behavior that you're showing up with? And how can you give yourself the nourishment, the time, the space, the peace, the love to yourself in order to open that bottleneck and let the information flow up to your brain so that you can actually make sense of what's going on and then respond appropriately. So many times I work with men and couples, I see that we're responding from this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn before we've had a chance to regulate our nervous system and regulate our thoughts and actually process our thoughts and respond from like a really clear place. We're responding too fast, and then we're having to deal with the damage of the fallout of that initial response. Now, you can ask for time. You can actually say the things out loud. This is one of the emotional truths, right? Two islands, bridge across emotional truths. You can label it. You can shift this by labeling it in real time. Hey, I'm freezing right now, or I'm going into fight. I'm feeling my body is doing this. Can you be with me in this? And I'm just going to work through it. You can literally label it and say it out loud, and your partner's going to hold you with it. If you're able to both do that, if you make an agreement that you're both going to do this, you can take the ownership and take the lead on this and say what is happening in your body and what you're feeling, not blaming her, like you're making me freeze is not the response, or you're making me go into fight, not the response. Just owning it and saying, I'm freezing up right now, or I'm going into fight, and I need some support to regulate this so that I can really meet you where I want to. It's all about you. You're not putting any blame or shame on her. You're owning your own feelings, and you're bringing it to the table, and you're staying in the discomfort so that she can really feel you and connect to you. You're getting that trade going across the bridge. Okay. This is the truth that's going to help you guys stay together when you feel like running away or fighting or freezing or falling, whatever it is. Now, when we understand what happens inside us, it lets us look at the patterns that we create between us, the predictable ways that connections break down. And this happens all the time, right? And I'm sure it's happened for you so many times. Something said, something's happened, you feel a certain way, you respond before you actually are able to overcome the fear or whatever it is that's happening in your body, and your response creates more disconnection. But when we start to take ownership and control over what's happening inside of us, then we take control over the trade, over the bridge, and we build more connection. We're actually just giving them information so that they know the kind of man or the person, the man that they're working with in that moment, real time. What's happening right now is I'm feeling like this. Just bear with me. Like, can you stay with me? It's an invitation. Can you stay with me while I work through this so that I can help you understand me and we can build more connection? Like, any partner who hears those words is going to be absolutely delighted. All they want from us is the truth. They don't want you to bend the truth or manipulate around it or dodge a piece of ownership or something that you need to own. They don't want to hear another solution or a justification. They just want the truth. They just want you to say, I don't know. Or, I don't know, and I feel a lot of shame right now, and my body's going into freeze or fawn, and I'm just dealing with that. So just give me a minute. I'm going to breathe through it, and then I'm just going to bring the truth to you. Any partner who hears that is going to move in for connection, because that's what they want. They just want the truth. Now, the Gottman Institute talks about the four main things that actually predict separation almost every time in every single relationship. Again, I said at the beginning, they've studied for 40 years thousands of relationships and marriages, and they find that the four main things that break down a relationship is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. Now, criticism is like attacking the person's character, not the behavior. So the thing they do, so you're attacking them and you're assigning their identity to the thing they do, which can be like a real character assassination. And that's definitely not good for connection. Defensiveness is when we deny our responsibility and we counter blame. So we put it back to them, like, you did, I only did that, I only exploded or erupted or this because you were just nagging me. It's like, well, that's not conducive to connection either, because if they were nagging you didn't like it, that was you widening the gap between your expectation and your tolerance, and you let them behave in a certain way to you that you're actually not willing to tolerate, and you built resentment. Rather than if you were super clear in the beginning and you shorten that gap between expectation and tolerance, you'd be able to deal with whatever was happening that was creating a response in you. And it might not even be the right response. You might even be able to address the response because it's not a true reflection of how you're feeling. And then you stop blaming. So criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling is just withdrawing, going really cold, emotionally shutting down, being moody and flippant and dismissive of your partner. That is stonewalling. And sometimes we might project that we're feeling that from them, when in actual fact, that's what we're doing. I've seen that so many times. We project that, you're just giving me the silent treatment, you're stonewalling. It's actually what we're doing. They're just reflecting back. Our partners are great reflectors. They just pick up what we're putting down and they magnify it, because the feminine is all about chaos and creation and emotional experience. So if we're putting down or putting out a lot of emotional energy, they will pick up on it and they'll magnify it back to us. So they're just reflecting what we're putting out. So if you're stonewalling them, expect to get stonewalling back. And then we feel hurt by that. And then we blame them by becoming defensiveness, or we criticize them for doing that. But in actual fact, it's us. So it's about holding up a mirror in front of your partner and saying, the judgments I have of this person, where can I take ownership over either where this has happened to me before? Maybe a previous partner did stuff like this, or maybe my parents treat me in a certain way, and we'll get to that. And I'm just kind of feeling the pain of that and assigning it to my partner right now. Or I actually feel embarrassed because I'm doing it, or I did it and now they're doing it, and I want to highlight it so that it reduces the shame that I'm feeling about when I did it. That's all wrapped up within stonewalling, defensiveness, and criticism. The number one predictor for divorce is number 4, contempt. So that is the sarcasm, the eye rolling, the belittling of your partner, the superiority. So the kind of grandiosity of this behavior, contempt, puts me above you. It's like top down or one up, and I'm above you, and I'm judging everything you're doing because I'm so perfect. Now, obviously, that's not what we're saying, but it's the message that we're giving across. When we have contempt and we judge our partner, we criticize them heavily, we are telling them that we're better than them. And that is the strongest predictor of divorce, because our partner does not want to be in a relationship like that, where they're constantly under the magnifying glass, and they're constantly being scrutinized and criticized, and that anything that they do is building contempt. They will not withstand that for long. They will not put up with that for long. So their tolerance for that is very, very low. So if you're leaning into contemptuous behavior, sarcasm, eye rolling, like they make a mistake and, oh God, you roll your eyes, and you get frustrated about mistakes that they're making, even though we make many mistakes, and we always will. We will never stop making mistakes. But when we judge and we don't have empathy for another person's, the person that we married, the person that we're supposed to love, when we don't have empathy for them making mistakes, we create this dynamic of superiority, and they will not tolerate that for long. Now, these aren't personality flaws. They are survival habits that really slowly corrode trust. And let that sink in. They're not actually personality flaws. They're not things that you have assigned to your identity or personality. They are habits that you've built over time. So anytime you criticize them, that's a habit. Anytime you become defensive, a habit. Anytime you stonewall, shut down, become silent and go into silent treatment and emotional withdrawal, habit. Contemptuous behavior, habit. So you can reprogram these habits. They are just a few changes away from leaving you, and more connection, the emotional trade being better. So know this, that conflict doesn't kill connection, contempt does. We need to write that down. Conflict doesn't kill connection, contempt does. Conflict creates clarity. We should lean into conflict and be willing to accept anything that comes from that clarity that we need to own in ourselves. Lean into conflict because it creates clarity. It doesn't kill connection, it actually builds more connection. We need conflict. We need healthy conflict for a relationship to survive. So notice which of the 4 horsemen that you ride the most often. So which of those 4 horses are you on the most? Are you on criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, or contempt? Which one do you jump on and ride the most? Usually appears in your tone, isn't always words, but which one resonates most with you? And let's start to shift it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at shifting this by using a practice that I call the soft startup. Now, this is just a phrase that you can say to yourself, you can say it to your partner. So when you notice one of these 4 horsemen like really starting to take control of you, I want you to stop and name it and be like, oh, I'm feeling X, Y, Z. I'm feeling this. And, I just want to take a minute to process this with you. Let's lean into presence and connection, because when we start to build connection in presence with the other person, we start to fulfill our base needs of being in community, in communion, in unity with another person. So we're going to use some nonviolent communication for this one. Now, it starts with an observation. So when X happens, so X is the observable fact. When X happens, I feel, so you're the observation, feeling, I feel Y. So X and Y. When X happens, I feel Y because Z. And what I need going forwards is X or whatever. So when X happens, I feel Y because Z, and what I need going forwards is fill in a blank. So you're observing a fact, you're expressing how it makes you feel, and then you're starting to look at what you need and making a request. So going forwards, can you fill in the blank? Now, this is what is so important about building connection, because these surface level patterns don't come from nowhere, but they take conscious action to start reversing them, reverting them back to a healthy, connective behavioral pattern. When we are doing one of these four horsemen behaviors, we need to actually catch them consciously and have something in place that we can say, I'm behaving like this, contemptuous, stonewalling, and I'm noticing the behavior. I'm not judging my own identity and attaching it to that behavior. I'm removing, separating that, but I'm going to now remove the behavior and transplant it with another one. So I'm going to transplant this other behavior of the nonviolent communication soft startup. So when X happens, I feel Y because Z, and what I need going forwards is fill in the blank. So can we now, or can you now, please, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what we're going to look at now. That is the big shift that we're going to use for these four horsemen. Now, when we don't do this, when we maybe sacrifice our truth, when we step away from our full truth and ownership and looking through all of these things, we can actually move into our next topic. We can move into the nice guy pattern. Now, this comes from Dr. Robert Glover. He calls it the nice guy syndrome. And nice guys trade authenticity for approval, and they actually lose both. So they lose their authenticity and they never get the approval because they're not being honest, not being true. They're not actually naming what's happening. They're not asking for what they need. And they're not being upfront about things. They're not addressing the expectation and tolerance gap. They're just doing whatever it takes to be loved. Okay. Now, when we learn early that being good means being agreeable, we start to self-edit to avoid conflict and to stay liked, to stay, because we think it's actually going to keep us safe, but it's not. It is building a fake connection that erodes safety because it's not true, it's not real. So how could it possibly be safe if it's not built on authenticity and authentic connection? So we make silent deals with our partner and create unwritten contracts that they don't even know they've signed. They don't even know they signed these, but we're creating these contracts that if I do everything right, she'll love me. If I do everything right, she'll love me. Now, just let that sink in for a second. Is that something that you've done in your relationship, consciously or unconsciously, that if you get everything right, if you show up, if you do everything, she'll love you? And then, of course, she won't leave you because, like, you're doing everything. Okay, if that's true, let's keep going. The other one is, if I stay calm, she won't get angry. If I stay totally calm, she won't get angry with me. Now, it's not to like blow up and get totally angry, but like sometimes you need to be assertive. And the nice guy has lost his assertiveness, which is a true masculine trait. It's what thrives masculinity. It's what lets masculinity thrive within us. When we are able to stand in our truth and own it fully, we are being assertive and truly masculine, which allows her to be feminine and soften. But when we just stay calm and agreeable, when our agreeableness dials up, she doesn't not get angry. Perhaps sometimes she gets even more angry because we're not standing up to her. We're not standing up in our true authentic power. And she starts to get a little bit, oh gosh, this is like not what I'm needing right now. So again, let that sink in as well. If I stay calm, she won't get angry. So my calmness diminishes her anger. Is that true in your relationship? Because what we're looking for is approval. In both of those things, we're looking for approval. But approval isn't intimacy. It's performance. You're performing in order to get intimacy. It's never real. It's not real connection. So approval doesn't equal intimacy because you're just performing to get it. And performance kills that respect between you and your partner. And she'll never give you the true intimacy anyway because she can feel it. Even if she's not completely consciously aware of it, she knows something's not right. Sometimes you need to push her away in order for her to want to come back to you. And we're not manipulating it. We're just being authentic. But sometimes a lot of men play the game in order to get sex, in order to get intimacy, in order to get closeness. And we don't say the thing we need to say. And that, again, that goes back to contagious apathy, where we're just letting stuff away. We need to grow a little bit of a backbone and say, actually, no, no. And sometimes if intimacy starts to become weaponized by your partner, this is what it really helps. Get rid of that nice guy and say, great, cool. I'm taking my sexual power back, my intimate power back, and I'm going to harness it in myself, and I'm going to use it to be firm and direct and assertive and compassionate with you. So let's see what we can spot. Let's see if you can notice the moments that you hold back your truth, when you say yes but you mean no, or smile when you're actually really angry about something, or you let her away with something that she said she wouldn't do and she committed to it but she's now doing it. Notice the times where you hold back your truth, and let's start to shift it. So the nice guy shift is to do one truth rep each day. So whether it's voicing a need, a feeling, a boundary without an apology, do those one truth rep each day. Voice a need, a feeling, or a boundary without an apology. You're in it, you're with them, you're assertive, you're not being a nice guy and passive and accepting. You're with them because you don't need their approval or them to feel calm and cool and connected and loving and all these things. It's not a performance, it's the truth. So courage first, comfort later. Sometimes we both need to adapt, and your truth, your assertiveness, your authenticity will allow her to find herself again and figure out where her expectations and tolerances are at the same time as yours. And you start to get a better picture of how you're actually connecting and what patterns you were performing in order to get that connection. Because most of these nice guy patterns didn't start in your marriage. And that's the most interesting things. They started in your childhood. So let's bring that into the light now. Let's look at our family systems and our attachments next. So family systems and attachment styles have been proven to be almost hereditary. Psychologists Murray, Bowen, and John Bowlby showed us that we don't just inherit eye color, we inherit emotional patterns. So how your family handled conflict or affection or silence or disconnection becomes your own relational blueprint later on in life. So you pick up these patterns and you start to play them out in your own adult life. So if you grew up around chaos, you might actually crave control. Okay, so just again, have a think about whether this aligns with your experience growing up. So if you grew up around chaos, you crave control. So when there seems to be chaos, even if it's just that you're losing control and it feels too chaotic, i.e., the feminine is taking over, so your partner's taking over the relationship, your life, they're doing everything, and you feel almost submissive or subjugated, that means that chaos is in place. You're not in control, so you might be craving that control. If you grew up around withdrawal, so if your parents use punishments and love withdrawal, or your dad maybe wasn't there, or one or more of your parents wasn't there all the time, or they withdrew a lot from you, you might chase closeness, so you might be desperate for closeness. And if you grew up around criticism, you might live on the defense. And that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people feel that if you were heavily criticized or you lived in a critical household, you might live in defense. Your nervous system is wired to defend your stance or defend your true self at all times. Now, the thing to remember is that this isn't about blame, it's about awareness, right? We're not blaming our partner for being everything or being anything, because we're being empathetic. We're practicing almost like tactical empathy. So we're using our empathy to build closeness. We're building that muscle. We're training the muscle of empathy. We're not blaming our partner, because anytime you blame someone, you get caught in the blame, shame, disclaim drama triangle. You blame them, you shame yourself, and you disclaim responsibility to change it. So in the drama triangle, there's the victim, the villain, and the hero. If you are blaming someone, you are in the victim zone. You'll always find somebody or something to blame, and inherently, you will shame yourself for being subjugated or oppressed by the thing that you're blaming. And you'll disclaim responsibility to step into the hero role because you're waiting for somebody else to come and save it or something else to happen in order to shift this dilemma into something that works for you, something that you want. So this isn't about blame. We're not being the victim here. So you have full permission to step yourself out of victim mode and take full awareness and ownership over your own patterns and your own behavior. So we're going to move you, which is the only way you can escape the drama triangle. We're going to move you from victim to hero. You're going to become your own hero, because the moment you can name the pattern, you can choose differently, right? You can choose. If you can see it, you can choose differently. And it's about making that awareness. I want you to write down this acronym. We're going to do ACT, ACT. We're going to use our awareness to make a different choice, and we're going to trust ourselves. So awareness, choice, and trust. When we can act appropriately, we can choose a different response. We can choose a different life. We can actually make our best life a reality when we act appropriately. So important to remember here is that you're not fighting your partner. You're repeating your past. So when these family systems and attachment patterns are playing out, you're actually not fighting them. You're repeating your past. You're playing out the same roles, the same dilemmas, the same arguments, the same disconnections, because your nervous system is still trying to learn. It's repeating the pattern until it learns how to break out of the problem. Like, it's repeating the problem. It's like a repeating game. I'm just repeating this level, repeating this level, repeating this level until I figure out how to get past this part of it, how to get past this boss, or how to get past this stage in the game. I'm just keeping doing it until I get past it. And that's what your nervous system and what's called your personal unconscious. So deep in your unconscious mind, you have a filing system of all the things that have happened, and these will fuel a lot of your actions. And you're constantly replaying things completely unconsciously until your brain and your nervous system and your personal unconscious learns how to break free from them. And oftentimes, because we're not aware of this, it just repeats and repeats and repeats forever. So let's work out how we can spot it. So when conflict hits, ask yourself, who am I being right now? Am I being my adult self, or am I being the kid I used to be that's replaying this pattern, replaying this scenario that I experienced when I was growing up? And that could be that you saw your parents behaving in a certain way. It could be that you behaved a certain way in a really early relationship, more likely early teens. So who am I being right now? Am I being my adult self today, present day, or am I being a kid from before? So when am I reacting from? So when something happens, when conflict hits, when am I reacting from? Who am I being right now? Me right now, or me back then? And then it's about creating a subtle shift where we're separating time and we're trying to realize that we are not that person back then. We are us now. We are not that person back then, and we can choose a different response. So what I want you to do is to write down 3 things you learned about love or conflict growing up. What are the 3 key messages that you learned about love or conflict growing up? And I want you to circle the one that's still showing up today. So what did you learn growing up about love and conflict? And what one is still showing up today? And that's the first pattern to start rewriting. We're going to bring our awareness to it. I am doing this. You're going to ask the question, when it happens, who am I being? Am I reacting for me now or me back then? We're going to transplant the behavior. We're going to bring in a new one. We're going to make a different choice. And we're going to trust that that choice is the right choice. So that's giving a signal to our nervous system to regulate and just let it go. Don't worry. You don't have to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Let's just see what happens when we take that behavior out and we bring in a new one. So now you can see where the habits come from and how we can start to change the habits of attachment that show up in our present day relationships. And the next stage is learning how to hold our power and our humility at the same time. So like I said earlier, not just wielding this assertiveness and this, non-nice guy behavior as like this, it becomes like an armor of superiority that we end up wearing. It's about applying humility to it as well. You can have your own personal power, but remain humble at the same time. And how to stand equal instead of above or beneath, that's actually showing up with relational leadership. We're looking for equality, and we're looking to shorten the gap between our expectations and our tolerance and meet each other in a beautiful way. So that's what I want you to work on now. Okay, we're moving into one of our last sections for the collapse of connection now, and that is addressing this power, shame, and integrity dynamic that we just covered in the family systems and attachment model. So we're looking at power, shame, and integrity, so that we can start to make sure that there's equal balance and we're showing up in the best possible way. Because the famous relational psychologist Terry Real says that you can be right or you can be in relationship. And I like that. And at my wedding, my wife's grandparents spoke a very short but very powerful poem, and it was funny because they're from Coventry and it was in a Brummie accent. So it was basically to keep your love brimming with love from the loving cup. Whenever you're wrong, admit it, and whenever you're right, shut up. So you can be right or you can be in relationship, and that was wisdom from at that point they were in their 80s. Now they're in their 90s and they're still together, and it really, really landed with me. And it was so short, succinct, powerful. It's important to be humble and in integrity. Now, here's the thing: when shame hits, some of us go down. So when we start to feel shame, some of us go down. We collapse, we over apologize, we disappear. We try to balance our internal shame by seeking approval and pity, and try to bring ourselves up out of shame by reaching up and taking. But sometimes people go up. We start to control, we lecture, we dominate, we seek for dominance and over assertiveness to make sure that we don't go down. So we actually pull other people down to bring ourselves up. And to finish this, we're going to examine the relational grid from Terry Real, his model, the relational grid. Now, this model maps the emotional postures that people take when relationships become stressful or triggering, and it helps you to see where you go under pressure and where healthy connection actually lives. So in the vertical axis, we've got grandiosity and shame. So this axis represents, your sense of self-worth in moments of tension, right? So grandiosity is when you go up, when you feel superior, righteous or controlling, and the inner voice says, I'm right, you're the problem, not me. And it looks like lecturing or dominating or sarcasm or emotional withdrawal masked as like a moral high ground. Now, this is a defense against feeling small. So when we feel small, when we feel like we fucked up, or that our partner has caught us doing something that we said we wouldn't do, or we made mistakes, we might feel small. We might feel shame. So we try to rise above the relationship to avoid vulnerability. We try and put ourselves on a pedestal to avoid that vulnerability, and we kind of become this grandiose version of ourselves. Now, the opposite of that is shame, is when we go down, when you collapse into inferiority, guilt, or self-blame, and the inner voice says, oh, it's all my fault and I can't do anything right. Oh, you should probably just move on and forget about me. And sometimes as far as, I want to end my own life. I've worked with men who have been in these states, this really low shame where it becomes catastrophic for us. Now, this can look like appeasing, over apologizing, people pleasing, or just emotionally disappearing. And this is a defense against feeling rejected. So when we make a mistake and we might feel rejected, we try to sink beneath the relationship to stay safe and actually seek pity. And pity is the most addictive substance that we have today. Not any other drug or substance. Pity is the most addictive substance that we have as humans, because it keeps us connected. It gets us what we need, but it's built on a fallacy. It's built on avoidance of responsibility. It's the easiest thing to get. If I just avoid responsibility and seek pity, people will love me and I'll be safe. So this shame down is the spiral down into self-pity, and it sinks us beneath the relationship. And the key insight from this is that grandiosity and shame are two sides of the same coin. Both are defenses against pain of disconnection or fear of not being enough. So we don't want to be up high in grandiosity or down low in shame. We want to balance this. We want to try and sit in the middle of this axis and know the lengths to which we can go, but choose not to. So awareness, choice, trust. We're going to be aware that we could spike up into grandiosity or dip down into shame. I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to be in the middle. I'm going to sit with it in my emotional truth and create the trade across the bridge and be real about what's going on for me. And I'm going to stay in the middle of this axis. Now, the horizontal axis is about connection versus disconnection. So this axis represents your capacity for emotional intimacy. So how open or guarded you are. Essentially, connection is openness, honesty, curiosity, empathy. You're emotionally available and stay in dialogue even when it's hard. Now, disconnection is when you withdraw or you avoid, or you go into silence, blame, or detachment, and you pull away emotionally or physically, creating distance as a way to protect yourself. Now, if you look at this, we now have, four quadrants. So in the top left quadrant, we've got grandiosity and disconnection. This is like a one up and out, superiority and withdrawal. So like, I'm done, you're ridiculous. Includes stonewalling, sarcasm, and contempt. The top right, we've got grandiosity and connection. So this is one up and I'm in. I'm trying to fix this. I'm lecturing you. I'm rescuing you. I'm being the hero. I'm telling you why I'm superior, why I'm amazing, and why this is what we need to do. So it sounds like, let me tell you what you need to do right now. You just don't get it. Essentially coaching your partner instead of connecting with them. The bottom left is shame and disconnection. So this is one down and out. So this is collapse, avoidance, self-silencing, self-sabotage. I can't do this, whatever, just forget it, just leave me, whatever, I'm not worth it. You should just leave. And this is hiding, shutting down, pushing people away to create the sense of safety. The bottom right is shame and connection. So one down and in. This is appeasement or fawning, people pleasing to keep the peace. You're right. I'm so sorry. Even when you just know more than me, like, oh, gosh, I just do what you say. Even when you're right and they're not right, you're over apologizing or walking on eggshells just to keep them happy. So if you're up in either of these quadrants, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, if you're in the middle or extremes in those quadrants, you're further away from the center. The center is relational integrity. This is the healthy zone that all healthy relationships live in. Right in the middle of this grid is balance between the extremes. It is relational integrity at its best, the ability to hold strength and humility, truth and empathy all at the same time. This is the posture of equality. I'm not above you. I'm not beneath you. I'm right here beside you. I'm willing to stay in the truth with you and trade on this bridge with love, accepting my own things that I need to own and move through, and showing empathy for yours, but guiding you to accept them as well. And from this place, you can take responsibility without collapsing into guilt. You can stand firm without becoming defensive. You can stay connected even during intense conflict. And it's what Terry Real calls full relational living. So how to use this grid is to, self-locate, like figure out where you are. In a moment of tension, ask, where am I on this grid right now? Am I top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right? Where am I? Am I one up and in, or am I one up and out? Am I one down and in, one down and out? So if you're up, soften. If you're down, ground yourself, bring yourself back up. If you're out, move towards your partner, move towards the truth, and start to regulate. So step 2 is about regulating. Step 1 is about locating where you are on the grid. Step 2 is about regulating yourself and bringing yourself back to center, however you can, using all the tools that we've spoken about, from attachment to nice guy to everything we've explored today. Bring yourself to the center of this graph and regulate yourself. Now, returning to the center involves taking a breath, acknowledging your feelings without acting out on them. Ask yourself the golden question: what would love have me do right now? If love, the true essence of love, was a person, what would love do right now? Love doesn't have judgment, doesn't have any criticism, contempt, doesn't have any stonewall, doesn't have any of the four horsemen. What would love have me do right now to help me return to the center? That question pulls you back to the middle, to connection, to equality, and presence. And why this model matters so much for men is because we have become totally disconnected from these fallible parts of ourselves. We've been desperately asked to be perfect for our partners, for our lives, for the current society and culture that we live in. We've got to be strong and vulnerable. We're being bounced between two polar opposites all the time, and we've lost who we are and how we can have relational leaderships. And most men live on the vertical axis, bouncing between shame of not feeling good enough and grandiosity as I'll show you I'm in control, because we're trying to figure out where we're supposed to be, where we want to be, and where people are asking us to be on that vertical axis. And that yo-yo is exhausting, and it keeps us away from real intimacy and trust. So learning to find the center of that, staying in the middle, to be both strong and vulnerable, is the foundation of true relational leadership. And that is what leads us back to connection. So the collapse of connection is when we lose True relational leadership, our way to revert the collapse of connection, is to come back to true relational leadership. So, our final piece for today is to wrap this all up in our emotional reset method. So, taking in all the information from the Gottman Institute, all the nice guy and nice guy syndrome behaviors that we've looked at, um, all the family systems and patterning that we're aware of, and Terry Reel's emotional regulation diagram. All of this, bringing ourselves back to center. Let's talk about the emotional reset system. So, step one, pause and regulate. When conflict hits, you have to think regulate first, relate second. So, pause and regulate. Step one, 3 deep breaths, feel your feet, say something like, give me a second, I want to respond clearly, not defensively. Step two is drop the agenda. Ask yourself, where or when am I responding from, or am I trying to connect or control? Like figuring out, how can I get back to the center of the graph, and how can I realize the patterns, and how can I start to build my awareness, transplant the behavior, make a different choice, and trust and stay in the discomfort and lead the relationship, dropping the agenda. Step three is shift the energy. It has to be led with your nervous system. We co-regulate. Remember, I said our partners are reflectors to us. You can never solve a problem with the same energy that created it. So someone brings you anger, you bring anger, it just blows it up. So replace the anger, lower your tone, relax your body, become a safe place for her to bring her emotion. Safety spreads faster through your presence than your words. Actually, let your body become safe, because we're not up in grandiosity. We're not down in shame. We're in the center and we're leaning in. We're in the middle of that graph. Shift that energy, bring that center point in. Step four is invite. Don't pressurize your partner. Invite them to maybe set aside some time where you can talk properly about this, or bring it to them in an honest way, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I just want a few minutes to gather my thoughts. I really hear you, and let's talk in 5 minutes once I've had a chance to really think about this, and maybe when you've cooled down or I've cooled down. So regulate first, relate second. Really, really powerful first session, guys. And remember, connection doesn't die because love disappears. It dies when fear replaces honesty and comfort replaces courage. So the rebuild begins the moment you decide to stop managing peace and start leading with your truth, and get that trade moving across the bridge in a healthy, really great way. And that's your work this week. Build your awareness, make better choices, and trust yourself from a place of compassion, empathy, and love. I'll see you next week.